Concrete bunkers loom like silent monsters along Europe's coast. Once they were the teeth of Hitler's most ambitious defense, the Atlantic Wall. Promised to be impenetrable, it stretched for thousands of kilometers and cost untold millions of tons of steel and concrete. Yet on a single day D-Day, its myth shattered. This is the story of how the greatest fortification of the Third Reich was built, tested, and broken. After the fall of France in 1940, Hitler feared an Allied return to the continent. The idea of a colossal coastal defense was born not as a symbol of strength, but as an admission of vulnerability. Nazi propaganda called it an iron curtain of concrete and guns, but in reality, it was a patchwork. German engineers began drawing plans, and the organization taught mobilized forced laborers to pour millions of tons of concrete. The Atlantic Wall was marketed as a single, unbroken barrier, but early construction was piecemeal. Some stretches bristled with heavy artillery. Others had only barbed wire and sandbags. Hitler envisioned a permanent front line that would free up divisions for the Eastern Front. His commanders doubted it could be truly impregnable, but no one argued publicly with the Führer's will. As propaganda films boasted of bunkers that could survive direct hits, planners quietly noted shortages of steel and cement. Even in its infancy, the wall was a compromise between ambition and resources. This gap would grow wider as the war dragged on, setting the stage for its failure. Designers poured ingenuity into coastal batteries with armored turrets and underground living quarters. Giant casemates like those at Lons-sur-Mer looked unassailable, and beach obstacles such as check hedgehogs and mined stakes were designed to destroy landing craft. The Atlantic Wall became a showcase for German military engineering on paper, but engineering alone could not erase geography. The coastline from Norway to the Spanish border was 2,600 kilometers long, impossible to harden uniformly. Each region had different tides, cliffs, and sandbars, demanding tailored defenses that stretched budgets and manpower thin. The illusion of continuity hid a reality of islands of strength separated by vast weak zones. By 1943, Allied reconnaissance had already mapped many fortifications. Photographs showed gun placements and gaps. Engineers built their marvel under constant watch, and every delay or shortage widened the holes in Hitler's armor. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel arrived in late 1943 to inspect the Atlantic Wall and was shocked. He found incomplete works, empty gun pits, and demoralized troops. Rommel, haunted by his North African defeat, believed only immediate aggressive fortification could stop the Allies at the water's edge. He ordered a crash program. More mines, more obstacles, more bunkers. Beaches sprouted wooden stakes tipped with explosives. Underwater mines dotted tidal zones. Rommel toured every sector personally, trying to inspire urgency. Yet he could not conjure concrete or steel from thin air. Even as Rommel strengthened the wall, he argued with other commanders over mobile reserves. He wanted panzer divisions stationed near beaches. Hitler insisted on holding them inland under his direct command. This dispute would prove critical when the invasion came. The wall was built not just of concrete, but of human misery. Millions of forced laborers from occupied countries toiled under organization taught, often under brutal conditions. Fatigue, sabotage, and low-quality workmanship left hidden weaknesses. Many bunkers were impressive shells with unfinished interiors. Garrison troops were often older men, convalescents, or foreign conscripts. These static divisions lacked mobility, heavy weapons, and motivation. While propaganda showed elite soldiers manning the guns, reality was a patchwork of reliability. Some units drilled tirelessly. Others waited listlessly for war to reach them. Morale sagged further as Allied bombers hammered railways and supply lines. Ammunition deliveries lagged. The wall's defenders knew they were expendable, a first line to slow the enemy until real troops could arrive if they arrived at all. Across the Channel, Allied planners studied every inch of coastline. Photoreconnaissance flights produced detailed mosaics of bunkers, obstacles, and troop movements. French resistance networks fed intelligence about weak points and supply shortages. What Hitler considered a secret weapon was, by 1944, an open book. Operation Fortitude amplified the deception. Fake radio traffic, dummy tanks, and a phantom army under General Patton convinced German intelligence that the main invasion would hit Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. Even Rommel's inspections could not penetrate this fog of Allied trickery. By spring 1944, the Atlantic Wall was both formidable and fatally compromised. Formidable where the Allies would not land, and compromised where they would. Defending 2,600 kilometers with finite resources forced impossible choices. Norway received heavy coastal guns to deter British raids. The Netherlands bristled with artillery protecting ports. Pas-de-Calais was lavished with concrete. Normandy, by comparison, received fewer reinforcements. The result was a defense line strong in spots, weak in others. Engineers joked it was like buttons on a string, powerful nodes without continuous fabric. Hitler's dream of a seamless fortress remained propaganda. Overextension also meant maintenance problems. Salt air corroded steel doors and gun mounts. Mines shifted in tides, some washing ashore uselessly. This silent decay further eroded the wall's actual stopping power. By June 1944, Rommel sensed the storm. He begged for more troops and prepared a network of obstacles to be completed by mid-July. Fate intervened. He left on leave to visit his wife on June 6th. At dawn, the Allied invasion began. German radar spotted the approaching fleet, but commanders hesitated. Was this the real attack or a feint? Hitler was asleep. No one dared wake him without certainty. Hours passed while Allied forces crossed the Channel. As landing craft slammed onto beaches, defenders fought bravely in some sectors. But without immediate reinforcements, even heroic resistance could not hold. At Omaha Beach, American troops met fierce fire from entrenched positions. Casualties were heavy. The Atlantic Wall seemed to bite. Yet naval gunfire and improvised assaults slowly knocked out pillboxes and casemates. Individual acts of courage overcame concrete. Elsewhere, specialized Hobart's Funnies tanks breached obstacles, cleared mines, and created gaps. Airborne troops inland sowed chaos, cutting roads and seizing bridges. The wall's static guns could not turn to face threats from behind. By afternoon, beaches were secured. What was supposed to be an impenetrable barrier had delayed the invasion only hours, not days. Hitler's insistence on controlling panzer reserves from Berlin delayed their deployment. By the time armored divisions moved toward Normandy, Allied air power strafed roads and bridges. Fuel shortages and destroyed railways slowed them further. Rommel's prediction proved true. Without immediate counterattack at the water's edge, the wall was meaningless. A fortress without a mobile sword cannot strike. The panzer divisions reached the front piecemeal, unable to throw the Allies back into the sea. The chance to make the Atlantic Wall's promise real vanished. News spread quickly through German ranks. The Allies had breached the wall. Once the aura of invincibility was gone, morale plummeted. Many soldiers surrendered rather than fight to the last. Commanders realized the wall had been a bluff sustained by fear. In Berlin, propaganda still spoke of heroic defense, but privately, generals admitted the system had failed. Hitler raged at his subordinates, but no one could reverse events. Concrete cannot move. Wars are won by flexible forces. The Atlantic Wall remained standing physically in many places, but hollow in meaning. It had become a monument to wasted resources. The Allies' mastery of amphibious warfare, air superiority, and logistics overwhelmed static defenses. Naval bombardment silenced big guns. Paratroopers bypassed strongpoints. Engineers improvised bridges and ramps. In modern war, motion beat immobility. The wall had been designed for an earlier era, assuming an enemy pinned to beaches under artillery fire. But combined arms tactics dissolved those assumptions. Fortresses once thought invincible, like the Maginot Line, were already obsolete. Thus, the Atlantic Wall joined history's list of great defensive works undone by innovation. The lesson echoed beyond World War II. Inside the bunkers, soldiers fought, feared, and sometimes resisted orders. Accounts tell of Danish conscripts weeping, Polish volunteers surrendering, and German NCOs fighting to the last grenade. The wall was not a monolith, but a mosaic of human fates. French civilians in coastal villages endured forced labor and bombings. Some sabotaged construction. Others watched helplessly as their homes were fortified. When the Allies landed, liberation and destruction arrived together. These personal stories reveal that behind the mythic structure lay ordinary people caught in extraordinary events. Within weeks of D-Day, Allied forces pushed inland. Many Atlantic Wall positions were captured intact, their guns turned around or left to rust. Hitler's greatest fortification became a series of isolated ruins. Post-war, the bunkers remained as eerie relics. Some were demolished, others became museums or playgrounds. Tourists now walk beaches once bristling with death, concrete crumbling into the sea. The wall's failure symbolized the collapse of the Third Reich's grand illusions. Massive, rigid projects that could not withstand the dynamic realities of war. Historians debate, could the Atlantic Wall have worked if built differently? Perhaps with concentrated defenses at likely landing zones and mobile reserves poised to strike? Or if Hitler had believed intelligence and shifted panzers sooner. Yet such hypotheticals ignore deeper truths. Germany's strategic situation fighting on multiple fronts, lacking resources, losing air superiority meant no wall could stop the Allies indefinitely. At best, it could delay the inevitable. Thus, the wall was doomed less by its design than by the strategic overreach of the regime that built it. The Atlantic Wall's failure teaches that no static defense is invulnerable without flexibility, intelligence, and morale. Concrete cannot substitute for strategy. Deception, technology, and mobility will find cracks. Even the most imposing structures depend on human decision-making. Leadership paralysis, poor resource allocation, and underestimation of the enemy can render impenetrable fortresses brittle. History repeats this lesson from ancient city walls to modern missile shields. The ruins along Europe's coast stand as silent warnings. Power without adaptability invites defeat. We've walked the length of Hitler's greatest fortification, from its birth in fear to its downfall in fire. The Atlantic Wall promised security but delivered illusion. Its bunkers still dot the beaches, monuments to hubris and human cost. If this story changed how you see World War II, hit like, share it with someone curious about history, and subscribe for more untold chapters of the past. In the next video, we'll uncover another hidden truth of the war, because history's greatest myths are often its greatest lessons.